that they encompasses not only the organ of the government and the political institutions of the state, but also the structures, process, and values through which this interact with the civil society. Okay, it follows the different political regimes have tended to prioritize different sets of criteria. Among the parameters most commonly used to classify the nature of political regimes are the nature of political regimes. That means when governmental bodies are made to take to formulate law and make decisions. Okay, when government make any decisions, that decisions must be go through a political systems. Okay, in political system there is three structures, that is input, process, and output. Input elements are supported by demand and support. By demand and support, it is go to the political process. Then in political process, after processing unit, decisions are made by the government, by the three organ of the government. Okay, that is the interlink between government and political systems. Okay, so you know very well that what is the interlink between government and political system. Government means those who take decisions, or those who make law for us. Okay, and political systems means when government take any decisions, they take decisions by the medium of a political system. That is the interlink between government and political systems. Okay, then we classify the three units, that is government, political systems, and political regime. The process of classifications of political regime serves three purposes. Okay, political regime has three purposes. First one is classifications of a political regime is an enabling exercise as far as the understanding of politics and government is concerned, as it involves the issues related to them mentioned in the second section. Okay, then second one is the process of classification facilitates a meaningful evaluations of a particular political regimes, which leads to a better governance. Okay, then third, apart from involving the normative issues, the process helps in tackling the questions at the consented level, like should the transition liberal democratic regime in the former communist countries from people's democratic regime to be welcome. So these are the three classifications related to political regimes. Okay, then next we discuss what is democratic principles. Democratic means what? The idea of democratic has exercised in the tradition of Western political thought. Okay, since ancient time. The term democracy was first used in the 5th century BC by the Greek historians Herodotus. Okay, in the sense of rule by the people. Okay, this term is derived from the combinations of two Greek words, that is demos means the people and kratia means the rule. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln famous definitions of democracy as government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Okay, is very close to its literal meaning. In short, shortly we discuss what is democracy. Democracy as a form of government implies that the ultimate authority of governance in this system is vested in the ordinary people, so that public policy is made to conform to the will of the people and to serve the interest of the people. In one sentence, where people have the power to choose his representative. Okay, then its different evolution. The term democracy is an ancient political terms whose meaning is derived from the Greek words, as I already discussed that what are the two Greek words, that is demos and kratia. Demos means people, and kratia means rule of the rule or authority. Okay, hence it means it simple means rule by the people. Okay, the word democratia was first used by the Greek towards the middle of the 5th century to denote the political regimes of their city state. Okay, the uses was a part of the classical classifications of regime that distinguish rule by one, okay, several, and the many. Okay, the advocates of democracy have always debated the question as to who should compose the demos. Both the classical Greece as well as in modern times, the citizen body has always excluded some individual as unique qualified. When Athenian democracy was at its highest in the 5th century BC, only a small minority of the adult populations of Athens compromised the demos, okay, or those able to participate in the political process. It is only in the 20th century that universal suffrage and other citizenship rights were mm, other citizenship rights were extended to all, okay, or almost all permanent residents of a country. For instance, universal adult franchise was introduced in Germany in 1991. A year later, it was introduced in Sweden. France introduced universal adult franchise only in 1945, just a couple of years ahead of India. Okay, that means India also applied democratic principles. Okay, along with the changing notions of what properly constitute the people, the conceptions as to what it means for the people to rule have also changed. The political institutions and the systems have evolved in the contemporary democratic regimes primarily to facilitate rule by the people. The ideas about political life that lead legitimacy to these institutions and systems and enriched in them are radically different from the democratic regime of classical Greece, the Roman Republic or the Italian Republic of the Middle Age and early Resistance. Okay, thus with the winning of universal suffrage, the democratic theory and practice turned to issue of democratic nation building as there was shift of the locus of democracy from the small scale of the city state to the large scale of the modern nation state. Okay, the assertion of national independence got reformulated in democratic terms as democratic regime came to be identified with the right of collective self-determinations. Consequently, even where the new post-colonial regimes could not ensure self-government, they nevertheless called themselves democratic on the strength of their experience of anti-colonial struggle. In the similar vein, one can refer to the people democratic regimes of the second and third worlds, which asserted their democratic legitimacy in the language of economics, pointing to their collective ownership of capital, productions, and distributions, work for all under planned economy while neglecting the political and legal rights, multi-party electoral system, and parliamentary politics. The democratic regime in the Western countries relies on traditional political and legal language, emphasis electoral and civil rights, democratic constitutions and institutions, and the formal liberty and equality of the political systems. Okay, so these are the some brief historical overview on democratic regimes. Okay, then how democratic regime worked in the developed states. Okay, the liberal democratic regimes in the developed states have been categorized as polyarchical regimes by Robert Dahl in his work Polyarchy, Participations and Oppositions. Okay, the term polyarchy has been preferred to liberal democracy. Liberal democracy refers to polyarchy by the Western comparative political theorists primarily because of two reasons. What are the two reasons? First reason is liberal democracy as a concept has been treated mostly as a political ideal than a form of reason and is thus invested with broader normative implications. And the second reason is the uses of the concept of polyarchy tends to acknowledge that the democratic regime in the developed countries, mostly Western, still falls short in significant ways of the goal of democracy as theorized in political theory. The liberal democratic or polyarchal regimes are to be found in the states of North America, Western Europe, and Australia. However, there are states like Japan and South Africa who has exhibit the same characteristics. Some of the characteristics may be identified under this regime. What are the characteristics? It first characteristics is these democratic regimes represents political institutions and practices which include universal suffrage. Okay, elections of representatives for a specified period makes them directly responsible to people. These reasons also provide equal opportunities to the citizens to compete for public office. The political parties and the political leaders enjoys the right to complete publicity for support. Okay. That means political parties they need public support in order to gain power, okay, or in order to gain authority. Then its next characteristics is free and fair elections are the basics of the formations of government. Okay, when government is formed, after before that, what happened? A free or fair elections is held. Okay, a competitive party system is supplemented by the pressure group and the lobbying organization. This pressure group influence the conduct of the government by mobilizing the people. Okay, the democratic regime reflects a high level of tolerance of opposition that is sufficient to check the arbitrary inclinations of the government. The existence of alternative sources of information depend on the control of the government and of one another is helpful in this regard. Institutionally guaranteed and protected civil and political regimes are further strengthened by the presence of a new social movement at all results in a vigorous and democratically conscious civil society. Then its next characteristics is the democratic regimes accept the presence of political cleverness due to diversity in the civil society. As such, political conflicts are seen as an inevitable aspects of political life. Political thought and practices enshrined in this democratic regime accept conflict as normal and but normal, not aberrant features. Okay. Modern democratic and next features is modern democratic regimes are distinguished by the existence, legality, and legitimacy of a variety of autonomous organizations and associations which are relatively dependent in relation to government and to one another. The next characteristics is these democratic regimes derive their underpinning from the Western liberal individualistic traditions of political thought. Okay, thus, beside guaranteeing the individual rights, they also support free competitive market society. The cultural and ideological orientations of this regime likewise is also derived from the Western liberalism. Okay, the next characteristic is the democratic regime in the developed world are not considered all alike. Okay, some of them tend to favor centralizations and majority rule, whereas other favor fragmentations and pluralism. Okay, thus the comparative political theories like Lajrhat distinguish these regimes between majority democratic regimes and the pluralist democratic regimes. So these are the some basic characteristics of democratic regimes. Then we discuss the democratism and before we as I discussed democratism and its uses in developed countries, next we discuss democratic regimes and and how it is useful for developing countries like India. Okay. A number of newly independent states of Africa, Asia emerged from colonial rule after the Second World War. Okay, all the developing countries, before we discuss about democratic regime and its relations with developing states, first we discuss about what is third world countries. Okay, third world countries, during the period of Second World War, the whole world is divided into two power blocks, that is USA and USSR. Okay, and some newly independent countries like Asian countries or African countries, India, Pakistan, these countries are newly independent from the colonial rule. So they try to remain neutral. So neutral countries are they are the third world countries, or now we call that countries are developing countries. Okay, so how democratic regime is fruitful or helpful for developing countries? Okay, a number of newly independent states of Africa and Asia emerged from colonial rule after the Second World War. Decolonizations brought forth the hope that the modernizations political elite of the new states might successfully transform the nationalist anti-colonial movement into democratic government and thereby advance the gigantic tasks of nation building and state building. Okay, most of these new states, however, suffered from severe handicap. Okay, some in the shape of objective conditions like lack of literacy and industrial development, and others because of their traditional culture like lack of democratic experience. Okay, thus even when most of these Asian and African post-colonial states adopted democratic form of regimes, many of these regimes developed authoritarian tendencies. Okay, many states in the developing world alternate between democratic and authoritarian form of regime. That means many developing countries follow democratic regimes, and some developing countries also follow authoritarian regime, and some countries are follow both democratic and authoritarian regimes. Pakistan is such an example. Then, while some regimes maintaining democratic form, they are authoritarian in actual working. That means some countries are in developing countries, those who follow authoritarian countries, but those follows authoritarian and democratic regimes. Okay, a major obstacle to the success of the democratic regimes in the developing states has been the deep ethnic divisions along the linguistic, tribal, and religious lines affecting their civil society. These ethnic groups remain at different stages of socio-economic and political development. The ethnic diversities are naturally reflected in political organizations and form the basis of political mobilizations on the part of the ethnic group for the fulfillment of their demands in a resource care economy. The political regime, in the face of the increased level of political participations by the wider groups with their increased expectations, find it necessarily to introduce measures that would coordinate and control these groups and their demands. Often such measures are the beginning of the authoritarian measures. Participations explosions has forced most of the democratic regime into authoritarian military or bureaucratic regime in the states of Latin America. Another major problem before the democratic regime in the developing states has been that of underdevelopment, as the dependency theory I have put in. Okay, this this call for strong initiative on the part of the regime. Thus, the democratic regime in the East and Southeast Asia states are oriented more around economic goal than the political ones. Their overriding economic priority has been to boost growth and deliver prosperity rather than to enlarge individual freedom in the Western sense of civil liberty. This essentially practical concern is evident in political economics of these countries. Okay, then second, in these countries of East and Southeast Asia, there has been broad support for strong regimes. Powerful ruling parties tend to be tolerated, and there is general respect and faith in the ability of the regime to guide and regulate the decisions of private as well as public bodies and drawn up strategies for national development. Third, these Asian democratic regimes command legitimacy based on Confucian's values, which states on loyalty, discipline, and duty. All the above three factors qualify the democratic regimes of East and Southeast Asian states as they reflect implicit and sometimes explicit authoritarian tendencies. Okay, then people's democratic regime in the Asian states like China, India have not been formal democracies in terms of competitions like China. Okay, have not been formal democratic principles. Okay, accountability and political liberties. However, unlike the erstwhile Communist Party regime in Eastern Europe, these regimes have been noted for the extensive participations as citizens have got used to voting periodically in local elections. Okay, Islam, as Samuel P. Huntington has argued in his work Class of Civilization, has had a profound effect on politics in the states of Africa and Middle East and parts of South and Southeast Asia. As a consequence of the challenges to the existing regime in the last 2 decades by the pro-urban, pro-militarian Islamic groups, new democratic regimes have been constructed or reconstructed on Islamic lines. Iran, Sudan, and Pakistan, among others, are the pertinent examples. Okay, such Islamic democratic regimes have been considered by the Western comparative as liberal on two countries. First, these regimes violate the distinction between private and public realms in that they take religious rules and percepts to be the guiding principles of both personal life and political conduct. Second, these regimes invest political authority and potentially unlimited power because the temporal power is derived from spiritual wisdom. As such, these regimes cannot claim to be based solely on the popular consent or follow the constitutional framework. Okay, it also be apt to note in this context that Islam has been found compatible with the political pluralism followed by the guided democratic principle in such countries like Pakistan and Malaysia. In essence, however, authoritarian tendencies have remained in the Islamic regimes, even if it may not correct to call them fundamentalism in character. We may not call them fundamentalism that they follow the fundamentalism or fundamental principles. So these are the different element or how democratic principles is fruitful in developed and developing country. Okay, then next we discuss what is authoritarian regime and what is the basic differences between authoritarian and democratic regimes. Okay, democratic principles always give an importance to the individual or to the people. That means people have the power through elections or through voting. They have the power that they choose their representative. Okay, but in authoritarian regime, the basic difference is in democratic regime there is people have the power, but in authoritarian regime there is people do not have any power. Authority is most powerful and nobody challenge authority. But here in democratic government, we can challenge authority. Okay, If authority is unable to work efficiently, then people have the power to to take his power. Okay, but in authoritarian government, people do not have any power. Okay, authority is supreme. So democratic and authoritarianism may be distinguished both in terms of their objectives as well as means to achieve them. Authoritarianism decide what is good for individual. The ruling elite impose their values on society irrespective of its member wishes. Okay, that means ruling body decides what is good for the people. But people do not have the power that what the things they what the things good for them. People don't decide that things, or people do not have the power to decide what is good or what is bad for them. It is the elite body or it is the authoritarian body. They decide what are the things, what are the or what principles is good for the people. Authoritarian refers to a form of government which insists on unqualified obedience, conformity, and coercion. It is, in essence, negations of democracy. Okay, when power is based on consent, respected willingly, and recognized by wider masses, it is legitimate and binding. This is called authority. Authority is power raised in a moral or ethical level. Authority involves legitimate exercise of power, and in that sense, it arises from below. Democratic regimes uphold this type of authority and are authoritative. However, when a regime exercises authority regardless of popular consent and with the help of force, it can be called authoritarian. As such, authoritarian is a belief in or practice of government from above. Okay, the practice of government from above is also associated with monarchical absolutism, traditional dictatorship, most single partyism, and most form of militarism. They are all are authoritarian in the sense that they are concerned with the representations repressions of oppositions and political liberty. Authoritarianism are distinguished from the totalitarian regime. Again, authoritarianism is different thing and totalitarianism is different thing. Totalitarianism depicts modern dictatorship in terms of a model government by complete centralization and uniform regimentations of all aspects of political, social, and intellectual life, and in these respects, transcending by far the earlier manifestations of absolute or autocratic or despotic or tyrannical regimes and their capacity to control and mobilize the masses. In this sense, totalitarianism is truly a phenomenon of 20th century. The term has been applied to the three radical dictatorial regimes of the inner war period: Italian fascism, German National Socialism, and Stalinism in Russia. Okay, it follows that though totalitarianisms are authoritarian, all authoritarian regimes are not necessarily totalitarianism. No doubt, the authoritarianisms are concerned with the repressions of oppositions and political liberty. However, unlike the totalitarianism, these regimes do not aim to achieve far more radical goals of obliterating the distinction between the state and civil society. Authoritarianism tends to tolerate a significant range of economic, religious, and other freedoms. So, what are the basic characteristics of authoritarianism? In the authoritarianism, the techniques of decisions by public decisions and voting are largely or wholly supplanted by the decisions of those in authority. The first characteristic is the authoritarianism exercise sufficient power to dispense with any constitutional limitations. That means when authoritarianism is supreme in authoritarianism, authority use supreme power. Okay, those in power. And next characteristic is those in power in an authoritarianism claim to derive their authority not necessarily and always from the consent of the governed, but from some social special quality that they claim to possess. The next characteristic is based on force. Authoritarian regimes are likely to use violence against the citizens who do not receive any importance in the governance. Power is control, changes of government or even of leaders is not smooth and peaceful under authoritarianism. Such changes take place either by means of cope dealt or as a result of revolutions. Cope has been a normal feature as far as the authoritarian regimes in Africa are concerned. Okay, then authoritarian regimes are likely to employ force also in their relations with other countries, since institutions of such regimes are not based on the participations of the people and are not accumulated to people. The moderating influence of public opinion is not effective in authoritarianism. People do not have the power to take participate in elections or voting, or they do not have the power of public opinion. Okay, as such the authoritarianism do not have the causes of international peace. Authoritarianisms are characterized by low and limited political mobilizations. Okay, depoliticization of the mass of the citizens fall into the intent of the ruling elites feast fits with their mentality and reflects the character of the components of the limited pluralism supporting them. Okay, contrary to the democratic regime, which represents almost unlimited pluralism in institutionalizations form, the authoritarian regime represents limited pluralism. The limitations of pluralism may be legal or de facto, implemented more or less effectively, confined to strictly political groups or extended to interest group. Okay. Moreover, political power is not legally accountable through such groups to the citizens, even when it might be quite responsive to them. Okay, this is in contrast to democratic regime where the political forces are formally depend on the support of constitutions. Okay, then authoritarianism in the post Second World War period. Okay, how authoritarianism works in the post Second World War period. Okay, authoritarianism have been mostly established in the developing states of Latin America and Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia. Okay, developed states of the West like Spain, Portugal, and Greece. However, have also experienced it in the post World War period. Okay, this regime more than political, economic, cultural, and ideological factors have been depend on the use of military power and systematic repression. Then democratic institutions, both formal and informal, have been either weakened or abolished, and the political and legal rights have been non-existent. This militarism have been mostly under the control of a junta comprising of the officers of the three wings of armed forces like in Argentina during 1978 to 1983 or in present day Myanmar. Okay. However, there are other forms of regime where a military backed personalized dictatorship is established. In such cases, a single individual acquires preeminence within the junta or regime, often being by a cult of personality drawing on charismatic authority. Okay, so and in such cases a single individual acquired preeminence within the junta or regime. Okay, often being by a cult of personality drawing or charismatic authority. The military regimes headed by colonel in Greece, general generally General Rawlings in Ghana, and Samuel Dio and librarian among the pertinent example. Still, another form of such a regime is one where the civil regime survived primarily due to the backing of armed forces. Okay, So in this way democratic regime work in post cold war timing. Okay. So you can in a well manner you can understand that what is the difference between democratic regime and authoritarian regime, and how democratic is fruitful in develop and developing country. Okay. One basic important principles between these two regimes of government is, or two form of government is, in one form of government, that is in democratic government, their people can fully utilize their power. Okay, where people have the power, ruling power. But in authoritarianism there is authority have ruling power, and authority have supreme ruling power, and individual has no power. So that this is the basic difference between democratic and authoritarian regime. This is all about our unit 3. Okay, the next we discuss about our unit 4, that is civilian and military regime. What is civilian and military regime? Militarism is approximately closer to authoritarian regime. Okay, and to some extent we also may call that authoritarianism or militarism is similar phenomena, but there are also some basic differences between authoritarian and military regime. Okay, the militarism is a powerful institutions in contemporary society of states. Okay, military regimes are a subset of authoritarian regime, but all authoritarian regime are not ruled by the military regime. Okay, generally the military regime has taken over the reins of government in a state afflicted with internal crisis. Otherwise, irrespective of the form of government, the military is expected to be subservient to the executive and assist it when called upon. Okay, on its part, the executive is expected to cater to the genuine requirements of the armed forces and give them their due. In other words, the civilian executive and the military are expected to perform their respective duties and not encroach upon one another's space, and thus not impeded the smooth functioning of the other. However, among the newly emergent countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, there has been a wide prevalence of the military interventions in policies. A number of these newly established states have witnessed military corps. Okay, since the 1980, there has been a transformation of military regimes into civilian ones in both developed countries and East Europe in the 1990s. But cups of and attempts cups continue to plug many countries, and militarism has have persisted in the developing countries. In our own neighborhood, the military in Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Pakistan has either come to power or have detected to continue to detect the civilian government from behind the scene. And the relationship of subordinations and subordinations existence between the military and the lawfully constituted public authorities has therefore emerged as an important basis for classifications of political systems. We'll first examine the patterns of civil military relations and later examine the features of military regimes and the impact that military rule had in the developing part of the world. Okay, first we discuss civil military relations. At the outset, it will be useful to clarify that the term the military civilian and civilian military relations, a standard definitions of military, refers to all segments of the state organized and uniformed armed services that share three defining criteria. What are the three defining criteria? First one is they possess the monopoly over weapons of war. Okay, that means uh, in the weapons of war militarism possess the monopoly. Okay, Then next one is their primary purposes is the defense of the nation state and its citizens against the external military threats. That means they defend nation state systems or nations or its citizens from the external war or external conflict. And third one is they are legalized and legitimized as instrument of the state. Okay, the term civilian is used to refer to all non-military social actors. Okay, civilian means all the non-military actors. Okay, institutions and organizations, both state and non-state. Okay, the term civilian military relations refers to the relationship between the military and civilian authorities, or in a broad sense between the military and society at every level. It should be, however, noted that the broad distinction between the two terms, civilian and military, has not been easy to put in practice. Okay, there have been societies in which the ruler and the tribesmen were also warlords and the armed herd. Okay, similarly, in the feudal monarchies of Europe, the barons were both the warriors and political leaders. It is only in the late 18th century, particularly after the French Revolution, that the loyalty of the officer crops to their dynastic sovereign or even to election authorities was replaced by loyalty to the nation. This development, combined with the development of the officers' corps into a career-oriented institutions with distinct lifestyles, training, social status, and marital interest, made possible the divergence of outlook between the armed forces and the government of the day. Okay, in the post-war period, the military emerged as a ruler or as a major factor in the politics of several developing post-colonial countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The wide prevalence of military rule in these countries can be guessed from fact that in the 5 decades since the Second World War, about 56% of the developing states had undergone at least one military coup. Okay, of course, military regimes existed in a few developed countries of Europe, Spain, Portugal, and Greece. Okay, but it was nevertheless the high incidence of military interventions in politics of developing countries that attracted the attention of political scientists. While the nature of civil military relations have varied from one political system to the other, and the issue of concern have differed at different points of time, one can classify political systems into three groups based on their pattern of civil military relations with minor variations in between. Okay, in the first group are political system in which the armed forces are depoliticized to large extent and in which the military is entirely subservient instrument of the state. India and the United States of America offer good example of this pattern. This form of civil military relationship does not preclude the military form exercise very considerable political influence, but the civil authorities had always the final says. Okay, in the second groups we have political system such as those in China and Iraq, where there exists a semibiotic relationship between the armed forces and the ruling party. This pattern of civil military relationship is prevalent in all Marxist states and in a number of other where an ideological single or hegemonic party control power. The former Soviet Union and Myanmar are the other good examples of this type. Okay. Finally, we have a number of politicized and in which the military has overthrown the lawfully elected governments and installed its own members as rulers, or has acquired enormous influence over the civilian government. Okay, Nigeria and Pakistan offer a good example of this pattern of civil military relations. Both these countries were under military rule for a prolonged period of 3 decades, and despite returning to a democratically elected civilian government, find that the military had emerged as a strong pressure group, wielding enormous influence in political decision makings. Okay, then how it's useful, or how or two prominent example of this groups are India and China. For example, the examples and features of militarism are discussed, this or applied in India and China. In India, there has been a established traditions of the a political nature of the military. In the early years after independence, the military was more or less excluded for any decision making in matters of foreign and security policies. Okay, that means military decisions are excluded from decision making process in India. After the 1962 war with China, there was an increased sensitivity in matters of external security, and defense acquired high policy priority. However, the military has not been accorded any significant role in the affairs of the state. The relationship between the civilian leadership and the military has not always been smooth. There have been a few occasions when the military had entered into a tug with its political masters. By far, the best known example of that of the then head of Indian Army General, okay, tendering his resignation to the then Prime Minister Pandit Nehru hours before his Pakistan counterpart was due to arrive in Delhi. The general withdrew his resignation letter. Okay, several years later, a detachment of the army had been moved from the peacetime location without the required permission from the civilian leadership, anticipating a serious law and order problem. Much later, in December 1998, the chief of the naval staff, Admiral Vishnu Vagbat, was shaken for compromising national security and willfully disobeying the orders of his defense minister. The admiral challenged the decisions of the government, but the Supreme Court upheld the government's decision to dismiss him from service. Okay, the sacking of Admiral Bhagbat is by far the most controversial episode in the gamut of civil-military relations in India. The actual dismissal and the days preceding the dismissal witnessed an acrimonious slaying match between the military and civilian arms of the government. Okay, these are the cases that happened in India. Then in China. In China, a country guided by Marxist ideology, it is the Communist Party of China which controls the affairs of the state. The military is at once part of the ruling structure and yet under the firm control of the party. The military and the party were closely interlinked, at least in the earlier years. Okay, then Mao draw a clear line of distinction between the military and the party, and said the party must always control the military, though he had also said that political power grows out of the barrel of the gun. Over a period of time, the military has acquired professional, and these had no occasion brought in it into a conflicting role with the party, though it is the party that still controls the military, a position that continues to the present time. In other words, the military has not always remained totally subservient to the party. The military was often a member of the highest decision making structures in the country, like in the standing committee of the Politburo. Okay, and however, it should also be noted that in the year 1987, the military was not represented on the standing committee for the reason that reforms initiated during that time sought to draw a clear line of distinction between the party, the government, and the military, having realized during the events that unfolded later the 1988 and 1989, demonstrating against the policies of the party that military did not evince expected levels of enthusiasm in performing internal security duties assigning to it. The military membership in the standing committee was restored in 1992. One analysis has observed that there is a greater interdependence between the party and the military at the higher level than at the lower level of the hierarchy. Whether the military would go on to acquire significant influence over the party, meaning political power, is a matter of debate among several analysts. The debate commenced especially after the military was included in the economic modernization drive and was asked to take up tasks that would eventually contribute to the country's treasury. In 1998, the military was asked to cease all business operations as it had been found that it was increasingly getting out of civilian control. Besides, among other things, there were also allegations of corruptions and ordering against the military as also having provided inspirations, okay, to the police forces and the judiciary to undertake business activity. There is also the view that having taken up business activity, the military has to an extent suffered professionalism. Okay, then we discuss how military interventions is useful in politics. As decolonizations gather pace and many countries emerge as sovereign independent state in Asia and Africa, it was widely believed that there was little chance that the military would play a role in their politics, and yet in a short span of time the military emerged as a strong political force in many of these countries. This has prompted a number of social scientists to study the specific nature of civilian military relations in the developing countries. Okay, then Samuel F. Finner book Man on Horseback, okay, is the first major work on civil military relations in developing countries. Finner relates civil military relations with political culture. He identifies four levels of political culture, and they are mature, developed, low, and minimal, and relates them with the propensity of the military to intervene and to the different kind of military intervention. Okay, low level political cultures lack state institutions and procedures regulating the exercise of power and weak or lack popular legitimacy. Developing countries is characterized by low political culture, that is weak legitimacy, are prone to experience ed or extreme form of military interventions. Okay, other factors have also been identified to explain the political role of the military in developing countries. For instance, some scholars have highlighted the link between the political influence of the military and the role it has played during the struggle for independence and subsequent state creation. Here, they cite the example of Algeria, where the armed forces were in the forefront in the country's struggle for independence from France. Okay, this has continued to legitimize its predominant role in the Algerian political up to the present day. Okay, In addition to the above, to the above discussion, or in addition to the discussion, there are a number of studies using statistical analysis of a large number of countries to explain a predict military corps, explaining the role of foreign aid, economic development, etc. But it has been difficult to arrive at conclusive finding, largely owing to methodological limitations. Okay. Then what are the actual meaning of militarism? As we observed earlier, militarism are states where members are of the armed forces make the top political decisions exclusively or predominantly. Although the terms covers the cases where an allied army of occupation rules a conquered states. Okay. The term militarism is frequently used with reference to state whose military forces have supplanted a formal civilian government or rule in their own name. Militarism differs from other form of authoritarianism in terms of origin or legitimacy or range of governmental penetrations into the society, or in combinations of all these factors. Modern militarism differ from the civilian autocratism in their sources of legitimacy. These civilian dictatorships in the developing world derive their legitimacy from their leadership in the independence struggle, or from the leadership of the single parties founded by them, or from some rigged elections. Okay, then we discuss about some kinds of militarism. Okay. Different militarism can be distinguished by the place the military holds in the decision making structure of the state. That means it depend on the place, or by what they do with the power they wield. Okay, the role played by the military in top decision making varies from state to state. Okay, that means military decisions or military regimes is vary from state to state. Okay, we can broadly distinguish two types here. That is, first type include, there is the military janta type, in which the supreme policy-making organ is a junta or command council of officers representing the three services. Then the military junta usually appoints a civilian cabinet to administer under its authority. Parties and legislature are suppressed, or else only a single official party is permitted. Often parties and legislatures are nominal and subservient artifact of the military executive. The military, as represented by its senior officers, plays the active and supreme role in the policy making in the military junta type regimes. This is the first type or first category of militarism, and the second category of military regimes include, there is a presidential type in which the military plays a supportive role rather than a creative or active role. Okay, here the cabinet is formed largely or wholly from civilian rather than military personnel. Okay, in Syria, however, the local political party is at the vanguard in a semibiotic relationship with the officer corps. Here, the military role is not limited to being supportive but extend to play a more active role. However, the existence of the party enables the president to arbitrate and so exert independent leadership over both civilian and military sectors. Okay, then what are the strategies of rulership? Despite these differences, one can discern strategies of rulership that are common to military regime. The first strategy of rulership or military rules is to manage their constituency, that is to keep their load on the armed forces. The military leaders group seeks to establish its dominance over the whole army. The establishment of this dominance often requires the use of ruthless violence to support the opposition factions within the armed forces. Okay, then violence and intelligence surveillance are, however, negative strategies of the rulership. Military rulers adopt positive strategies to keep the armed forces stratified. Okay, then military, how military used in politics. Okay, the consequences of it in the 1950s and 1960s, when armed communist Certain the countries of Southern Asia, Western capitalist countries, came to see the military as an important institution to fight and defeat their onward march. Social scientists, particularly those in the United States, need to making their studies policy relevant, overestimate the role of the military in the modernizations of the developing countries. Lucian Pye, M. Halpern, and J. J. Johnson, for instance, developed theoretical models depicting the military as a highly modern force capable of transferring its organizational and technical skill to field of government and administrations. However, these expectations were belied by several studies done later. Most empirical studies conducted on militarism in the developing countries revealed that they had a negative or at best no unique effect on social and economic modernizations. Okay, these are the regimes, or these are the practice of military regimes. Okay. So this is all about our unit 4. Okay, you may note down some important questions relating to your unit 3 and unit 4. Okay, in unit 3, you may write down the questions that what is the basic difference between democratic regime and authoritarian regimes. Okay, this is the most important question. What are the basic difference between democratic regimes and authoritarian regime? Then for unit 4, you may write down in what ways do military dictatorship differs from totalitarian dictatorship. Then what are the typological, or what are the typical strategies or rulership adopting by military regimes? What are the typical strategies of rulership adopted by military regime? So these are the some most expected question about you about for your unit 3 and unit 4. So this is all about unit 3 and unit 4. If you have any doubt, then you can ask me. Okay, then thank you.